The first time Ethan heard the signal, he thought it was just another glitch in the endless static of late-night radio. He had been driving for 8 hours straight, somewhere along Highway 93, a long, forgotten road cutting through the Nevada desert. The clock on his dashboard was broken, showing the same time for the last 2 hours, 3:17 a.m. Outside the window, nothing. No headlights, no towns, just sand, silence, and the whisper of the wind scraping against the car. He was supposed to be on his way to a small town called Dry Creek, a place that had purportedly vanished, not destroyed, not evacuated, vanished. A week ago, a short-wave transmission from that area appeared online. A strange, distorted voice repeating the same coordinates over and over again. Most people thought it was a hoax. Ethan didn't. He was a journalist, or at least he used to be. Once famous for uncovering military cover-ups and hidden experiments, he had lost his credibility after publishing a story about phantom towns in the desert. Now, this was his chance to prove that he hadn't gone insane. At 3:21, the radio static cracked again. A voice, faint, genderless, came through the speakers. "Don't come here. There, still." The message broke into static, then silence. Ethan leaned forward, adjusting the dial. The voice returned, whispering the same coordinates as before. Latitude, 37.0041. Longitude, -116.759. He checked his map. Those coordinates pointed directly to the center of the old Dry Creek Valley, where the town used to be. Only one problem. According to every database and satellite image he could find, Dry Creek no longer existed. He drove on. The desert stretched endlessly, and the air outside grew colder. At some point, he realized he hadn't seen a single star in the sky. The darkness above was thick, unnatural, like a curtain. The road sign appeared out of nowhere. A metal pole, half-rusted, letters nearly erased by time. But when Ethan stepped out of the car and shone his flashlight on it, the words were still visible. "Welcome to Dry Creek. Population 312. He froze. The letters looked freshly painted. The town appeared on the horizon 20 minutes later, dim lights flickering in the fog. It shouldn't have been there, but it was. Storefronts, houses, traffic lights, everything looked alive, but no one moved. He drove slowly through the main street. A diner still had neon signs buzzing in its windows. The clock tower showed 3:17 a.m., just like the car's broken clock. Ethan parked, opened the door, and stepped into the cold air. It smelled like dust, rust, and rain that never fell. "Hello?" he called out. His voice echoed. No answer. Inside the diner, plates of food were still on the tables, coffee cups half full. A jukebox in the corner flickered, playing a soft, broken tune that skipped every few seconds. When he looked behind the counter, he noticed something that made his stomach twist. A notebook, open on the register with a half-written note. "They're still walking. Don't look at their faces." The sound of the jukebox stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than before, thick, suffocating. Then, from the reflection in the diner window, Ethan saw movement. Something crossing the street, outside. He turned around, but there was nothing. Only fog. He stepped back, heartbeat quickening. The reflection moved again, this time closer. It wasn't human. It looked like a shadow in the shape of a person, tall, thin, with no face, just a blur where the features should be. And it was standing right at the edge of the light. Ethan turned off his flashlight. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, watching. For the first time, he realized that the town wasn't empty. It was full of things that shouldn't exist. And every single one of them had been waiting for someone to come back.
The figure outside the diner hadn't moved for several minutes. It stood perfectly still, as if carved out of the fog itself. No face, no sound, no movement, only that vague human outline, half seen through the cracked glass and neon flicker. Then the jukebox came back on, a single note, soft, old, a song from the 1950s, Blue Moon. Ethan's breath hitched. He turned toward the sound, and in that split second, when the light flashed red and white across the window, the figure was gone. He rushed outside. Nothing but silence, but the fog had thickened, and the air felt heavier, like walking through wet fabric. The town stretched out before him. Small houses, a church at the end of the street, a grocery store, an old cinema. Everything perfectly intact, everything dead. He lifted his camera and started recording. This is Ethan Cole. Date unknown. Time, approximately 3:25 a.m. Location, Dry Creek, Nevada. The town, it shouldn't exist, but it's here. And He stopped. There was a sound in the distance. Footsteps. At first faint, then clearer. Several of them. Slow, uneven, like people walking barefoot on wet pavement. Ethan turned the camera toward the noise. Nothing visible, only fog rolling between the houses. But the sound didn't stop. It multiplied. Dozens of footsteps now, moving closer. He stepped backwards, keeping the lens steady. "Hello?" he shouted. The footsteps stopped. Silence again, but in the recording, something continued, an echo that didn't match his voice. It repeated his words, slower, distorted. "Hello." Ethan froze. He replayed the last few seconds. The echo came after his voice. Someone or something was repeating him. "Who's there? Who's there?" His hands began to shake. He switched off the recorder and slowly turned toward the church. The doors were open. Inside, the air was colder. The candles still burned on the altar, their flames trembling as if reacting to his heartbeat. Rows of empty pews, prayer books open, pages fluttering despite the still air. And then the sound again, this time closer, a whisper. "You heard the signal, didn't you?" Ethan spun around. No one there. The voice came from everywhere, the walls, the ceiling, the floorboards. They never left. They just forgot who they were. He lifted the camera again, recording the dark hallway that led behind the altar. A shape passed by. Not a person, more like a blur of smoke. It left a faint afterimage, like static on old film. "Who are you?" Ethan whispered. The air responded with a hollow hum, as if the building itself was breathing. Then faintly, he heard it again, that same broken broadcast from the car radio. The same voice, the same coordinates. "Don't come here. They're still walking." The church lights flickered once, twice, then went out. He ran outside. The fog had turned almost white now, glowing faintly, like a reflection of light from somewhere deep below the ground. And there, in the distance, the same faceless figure stood again,
Only now there were many of them, dozens, all facing him, silent, motionless. He backed away slowly, breathing hard. Every step he took made a soft echo, but the echoes came before he moved, like time itself was out of sync. His radio crackled. Another voice came through, female this time, soft, trembling. "If you hear me, you need to leave. They copy what they see. They think you belong here." Then static. Ethan turned off the radio, heart pounding. He looked at the figures again. They hadn't moved. But something else had changed. The signs around the town, the diner, the grocery store, every one of them now had new writing, faintly glowing in the dark, words that hadn't been there before. On the diner window, in smeared red letters, "Welcome back, Ethan." He dropped the camera. It hit the ground, the lens shattering, but still recording. Through the cracked display, you could see his reflection, and behind him, in that faint shimmer of fog, someone else standing where he should have been.
Ethan's hands trembled as he picked up the broken camera. The screen flickered, static crawling across the image like digital frost. Through the crack, the reflections still showed two shapes, one of them his, the other standing just behind him. He turned. Nothing. Only fog. Only silence. Only that endless street, frozen in time. He forced himself to breathe. He needed focus, evidence, data, logic. He was a journalist, not a ghost hunter. There had to be an explanation. There always was. He turned the camera back on. The lens was cracked, but it still worked. The timestamp on the screen blinked. 03:17 a.m. Still. He'd been here for over an hour, yet time hadn't moved. He started walking again, past the diner, past the rows of empty houses. The fog swirled around him like slow smoke. Sometimes he thought he saw faces inside it, pale, half-formed, watching him. When he blinked, they vanished. He stopped at a gas station. The sign above the pumps flickered weakly. Open, 24 hours. Inside, everything looked normal. Snacks on shelves, a fan spinning slowly on the ceiling. He walked to the counter, found a dusty landline phone, and lifted the receiver. Static. But under it, a whisper. "You shouldn't be here, Ethan." He froze. "Who is this?" "You heard the frequency. You followed it. That's how they find you." The voice was faint, broken, almost mechanical, like it was passing through layers of static, through time itself. "They repeat what they see. They build the town again and again, every time someone listens." "Who are you?" he whispered. "The first one who came here, and the last one who left." The line went dead. He dropped the receiver. The sound echoed unnaturally, bouncing off the walls like it was inside a tunnel. On the counter, a small black radio sat humming quietly. Old, scratched, covered in dust. Ethan turned the dial slowly, only static. Then, faintly, a low hum emerged. A repeating tone. It wasn't random. It was a signal. He pulled out his recorder and placed it next to the radio. "Recording log 3, he said. "I think I've found the source. There's a repeating pattern, 6 tones, then silence. It could be a transmission beacon or something else." He played it back. At first, nothing unusual. Then, buried inside the static, a voice. 13 minutes until full cycle. Don't let them touch the radio." The voice sounded human, but the message, it was coming from the future. He looked at the timestamp again. 03:17 a.m. No change. He left the gas station and followed the power lines that stretched out toward the edge of town. The fog was denser here, pulsing faintly, almost like it was breathing. In the distance, he saw the silhouette of a radio tower. Old, rusted, its top blinking red through the mist. The closer he got, the louder the hum became, deep, vibrating through his bones, like the ground itself was resonating with the same tone. His flashlight flickered. The beam cut through the fog, revealing faint shapes moving in the distance. Dozens of them, all standing still, all facing the tower, and all whispering the same thing under their breath. 317, 317, 317. Ethan's pulse spiked. He reached the base of the tower. There, half buried in the dirt, was a metal hatch, heavy, military grade, marked with a faded emblem, U.S. Signal Research Division, 1954. The latch creaked as he pulled it open. A cold gust of air rose from the darkness below. He turned on his flashlight and descended. The tunnel stretched deep under the town. Old wiring ran along the walls. Rust, dust, silence. Halfway down, he found a door slightly ajar. Inside, a control room. Ancient monitors lined the walls, glowing faintly with static. On one of them, he saw the town, live footage, from above, as if it were being broadcast in real time. Every screen showed the same timestamp, 03:17 a.m. He approached the console. A tape recorder sat beside the keyboard, its reels still spinning slowly. He pressed play. A voice filled the room. Project Resonance, Test 47. The experiment was designed to contain the temporal echo produced by the incident at Dry Creek. Do not engage the frequency after cycle reset. The subjects are still active. Static. If you are hearing this, you are inside the echo field. You are not in the real world. You are in its memory. The tape clicked off. Ethan's throat dried. The town wasn't real. It was a recording, a loop, a frequency that had captured an entire place, an entire moment in time, replaying itself forever. That's why no one could find Dry Creek. It wasn't gone. It was stuck. He turned the recorder off and whispered into the darkness, "How do I get out?" A voice answered immediately, this time right behind him. "You can't leave until the signal stops, but it never does." He turned, and for the first time, he saw its face. Not a ghost, not a shadow, but himself.
Same tone, same breath, same fear. It echoed softly in the tunnel, bouncing between the steel walls until it felt like the whole place was whispering his name. Ethan. Cole. He raised his flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, and there, standing in the doorway, was him. The other Ethan. Face pale, eyes hollow, movement slightly delayed like a reflection lagging half a second behind a mirror. It didn't breathe. It only watched. He stepped back, his boot scraping against the concrete. The sound was wrong, too sharp, too clear, like the air itself was recording him. "Who are you?" he asked. The figure tilted its head, the same gesture he made moments before. Then it spoke, in his voice. "Who are you?" He felt something in his chest, a heavy, cold pressure, as if his heartbeat had started syncing with the hum coming from the radio tower above. He turned off his flashlight. Darkness swallowed everything. But even without light, he could feel the copy still standing there, still watching. He ran. The tunnel led him deeper underground, where the air grew stale and damp. At the end, he found another door, this one locked with a keypad. He tried a few combinations, but they all failed. Then he noticed the same numbers carved in the metal, faint and crude. 3, 7, 1. He pressed 3, 1, 7. The lock clicked. Inside was a laboratory, or what was left of it. Tables overturned, cables ripped from the walls, papers scattered like fallen leaves. Old equipment still hummed faintly, lights blinking at random. He brushed dust off one of the folders on the floor. The label read, Project Resonance, Phase 3, Temporal Duplication. Inside were photos, black and white images of the town, the tower, and people. But every photo had the same face, repeated over and over, blurred, distorted, but still recognizable. His face. The notes were handwritten. The signal doesn't just preserve data, it preserves identity. Each transmission recreates the subject. Each cycle produces a new instance. He dropped the folder. They weren't ghosts. They were copies, reflections created by the signal, endlessly replayed, reliving the same night, the night Dry Creek vanished. And now the signal had recreated him. The hum from above deepened. He looked up. The ceiling pipes began to vibrate, dust falling like ash. The frequency was changing. He picked up an old headset from the table and plugged it into the wall terminal. A low crackle. Then a voice came through, distorted, female, but clearer than before. Ethan, if you can hear this, the loop is collapsing. Every time the frequency resets, it tries to replace you. Don't look into reflections. Don't answer your own voice. Who are you? He whispered. You already know. You recorded this message hours ago. Static. The voice was gone. He stumbled toward a cracked mirror hanging near the exit. The glass was fractured, pieces missing, but his reflection was still there. Except it smiled, and he didn't. The mirror version stepped closer, pressing his palm against the inside of the glass. Ethan stepped back. The reflection didn't. It pressed harder. Cracks spread across the surface, and something behind the mirror began to move. A hand, real, breaking through. He turned and ran up the staircase leading out of the lab. As he reached the top, he could hear it following, the same footsteps, perfectly matching his own, echoing half a second later. When he burst out into the night, the fog had turned crimson, pulsing like veins under skin. The buildings flickered, glitching in and out of existence, as though the town itself was struggling to hold its shape. Every window reflected him. Dozens of versions of Ethan, standing still, staring back, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. He raised the camera and whispered, "Recording log 4. The town is breaking. The reflections are alive. I don't know if I'm still real anymore." The screen on his camera distorted. Lines of code began to appear over the image, coordinates, timestamps, and one phrase repeating endlessly. Mirror signal active, new instance generated. He dropped the camera. Somewhere behind him, one of the reflections spoke. "Don't run. You'll only come back." He turned to run anyway, but the street ahead was gone. Only fog, only darkness. And somewhere deep inside it, hundreds of voices whispering the same time over and over again. 3, 17, 3, 17. The next morning, the fog returned, thicker, denser, and eerily silent. Noah woke to the sound of dripping water and the faint hum of electricity from somewhere deep in the town's core. His breath hung in the cold air like smoke.
The wind had stopped, and everything felt paused. He stepped outside. The mist was so heavy that he could barely see 5 feet ahead. But the sound, it was unmistakable now. Faint voices, whispering. Not quite words, but more like broken syllables, fragments of emotion, pleas perhaps, or warnings. The radio, which had been silent for days, suddenly crackled to life inside the diner. Noah rushed back in, his pulse hammering. Static filled the air, and then a voice, trembling, distant, almost mechanical. "Don't stay too long. They watch." Then silence. He stared at the radio, feeling his throat go dry. He picked up his backpack and flashlight and decided to follow the sound of the whispers. They seemed to pull him north, past the burnt-down motel, past the gas station with shattered windows, and into the residential part of town. Most of the houses looked abandoned decades ago. Paint peeled from the walls, windows shattered, doors hanging open. But one house stood out. Its porch light flickered weakly, running somehow on a generator still humming in the basement. Inside, everything was frozen in time. Plates were still set on the dining table. A TV flickered static in the living room. Children's toys were scattered across the floor. But there was no dust, no decay, as if the people had just vanished. Noah found a photo album on the table. It was open to a family portrait. Mother, father, 2 kids, all smiling. But their faces were blurred. Not motion blur, more like something had erased them from the photo itself. The whispers grew louder. He turned toward the hallway and saw faint shapes moving through the mist that had seeped inside. Human outlines, but transparent, their faces blank, their bodies twitching slightly as if stuck between frames of reality. He stumbled backward, his flashlight flickering. One of the figures turned its head, not fast, but slow, deliberate, like it heard him breathing. Then the lights went out. He sprinted out of the house, the fog swirling violently around him. The whispers turned into distorted screams, layers of voices overlapping, repeating one phrase again and again. "We never left." He collapsed near the street sign, half buried, rusted, but still legible. "Welcome to Still Creek, population 1,208. He looked around. For the first time since arriving, he realized the truth. The fog wasn't just weather. It was the town itself, alive, watching, remembering, and he was now part of it.
The church stood at the end of the main road, tall, cracked, and leaning slightly to one side, like the ground itself wanted to swallow it. Noah had passed it before, but never dared to enter. This morning, though, he felt drawn to it. Maybe it was the faint ringing of its broken bell in the wind. Maybe it was the voice that had whispered to him through the radio. When he pushed the door open, the hinges screamed in protest. Inside, rows of pews were scattered and splintered. Candle wax had melted down into thick puddles long ago, and the crucifix at the front hung by one nail, tilting to the left. The air smelled of mold and something metallic. Blood, maybe. On the altar lay an open book, a leather-bound journal. Its pages were warped and yellowed, but the writing inside was frantic, uneven. We sealed the tunnels beneath the church. The fog came from below. The dead, they returned through the mist. God forgive us. Noah froze. Beneath the church. He lifted the carpet near the altar and found a hatch, old, iron, and rusted shut. After a few hard pulls, it creaked open, releasing a gust of cold, damp air. He shined his flashlight down the stairs. Stone walls, wooden supports, a narrow tunnel leading into blackness. He descended slowly, one hand gripping the rail, the other clutching the light. Each step echoed for too long, bouncing back like there were others walking behind him. The tunnel split into 3 passages. On the wall, someone had carved messages with shaking hands. They hear you. The air breathes. Turn back. He kept moving. Deeper inside, he found remnants of what looked like an underground shelter. Old cots, canned food, half-burned candles. A small cassette recorder sat on a table next to a body slumped in a chair. Noah pressed play. A distorted voice came through. We tried to contain it, but it spreads through the air now. Not infection, not disease, memory. The fog carries them. We can't bury the dead anymore. They come back because the town remembers them. Static followed. Then a single, trembling whisper. You shouldn't have come here. The recorder clicked off by itself. Noah backed away, but then his flashlight flickered once, twice, before dying completely. The dark was absolute. And then from the tunnel behind him came the sound of footsteps, slow, wet, deliberate. He turned on his lighter, its small flame trembling in his shaking hand. In the weak glow, figures began to emerge from the corridor, half-seen, crawling, twitching shapes, their faces smeared with something dark, their eyes reflecting the light like animals. He ran. The tunnel shook with the sound of pounding footsteps and distorted echoes, as if the walls themselves were whispering his name. He reached the stairs, slammed the hatch shut, and collapsed against it, gasping for air. For a long time, he just sat there, staring at the crucifix hanging above the altar. But then the church bell rang, by itself, once, twice, and from outside, the fog began to creep under the door again.
By the time Noah reached the diner again, the fog had thickened into a pale wall, swallowing the streets, the cars, the buildings. It was no longer weather, it was a presence. Every sound he made bounced back distorted, like the air itself was imitating him. He slammed the door behind him and dropped his pack. His hands were trembling so hard he could barely light the small camping stove. He needed warmth, something real, something alive. But then he saw it. The radio. It had turned itself on again? A low hum filled the room, followed by faint, broken static, and then a voice, almost mechanical, like it came from somewhere far beyond this town. Still Creek, still, alive, evac. Then the signal cut. Noah leaned over the radio, twisting the knobs, slamming his palm on the top of it. The sound came and went, a ghost of a signal from somewhere outside the fog. He caught bits of phrases, containment, outbreak, memory field, and then his name. Noah, if you can hear this, leave. It's spreading. The fog is not... Silence. He froze. That voice, it knew him. But no one should have. He'd never told anyone where he was going. Outside, a faint red glow appeared through the mist, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. He stepped to the window. It came from the radio tower on the hill above the town, the one he had seen on his first day, but assumed was dead. He grabbed his flashlight and shotgun. If there was a signal, someone had to be sending it. And maybe, just maybe, there was a way out. The road up to the tower wound through the forest. Trees bent unnaturally, bark blackened like from old fire. Strange shapes hung from the branches, old clothing, bones,
masks made of burlap. Someone had left them there as warnings or offerings. The higher he climbed, the more the world seemed to blur. His flashlight beam scattered weirdly like the fog itself bent light. One point he swore he saw himself standing in the mist ahead. Same jacket, same flashlight. But when he blinked, it was gone. The tower loomed at last, tall and skeletal, humming faintly. The door at the base was open. Inside, the walls were lined with old broadcast equipment, blinking red lights, outdated screens, cables running across the floor like veins. A tape was running in one of the decks, looping endlessly. He pressed stop, then play. The signal keeps looping. It's not us broadcasting anymore. It's them. They use the frequency to pull others in. We thought we were warning survivors, but the fog learned. It talks now. Noah's stomach dropped. He turned toward the main control board. A single light blinked above a dusty microphone labeled Live Transmit. He hesitated, then pressed it. Hello? Can anyone hear me? For a long moment, nothing but static. Then, faintly, impossibly, his own voice answered back. You can't leave, Noah. You're already part of the broadcast. The lights in the room flickered violently. The hum rose into a shriek. The fog outside surged against the tower windows like a living sea. Noah stumbled backward, knocking over a chair, ripping the microphone cord from its socket. The noise stopped instantly. Silence. Then the radio crackled one last time. Welcome to Still Creek Radio. And all the equipment turned on by itself.
When Noah stumbled out of the radio tower, the fog was thicker than before, a suffocating mass that swallowed every sound. Even his own breathing came back delayed, as if someone else was echoing it. He started down the hill, flashlight trembling in his hand, trying to retrace his steps. But something was wrong. The landscape didn't look the same anymore. The same crooked trees repeated again and again, the same rusted car wreck on the side of the road, the same torn billboard half swallowed by vines. It wasn't déjà vu, it was a loop. He walked faster, then ran, but each time he reached the bottom of the hill, he found himself standing at the base of the tower again. The red beacon still pulsed overhead like a heartbeat, steady and mocking. No, 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 he whispered. I came down. He tried marking a tree with his knife. When he circled again, the mark was already there, deeper, older, like it had been carved years ago. Then he saw it. A figure standing in the fog ahead. Same jacket, same backpack. It was him. The double turned, face pale and hollow-eyed, and whispered something Noah couldn't hear. Then it dissolved into mist, leaving only a faint echo of words. You never left. Noah stumbled backward, clutching his head. The radio tower flickered again, but now it was in 3 places at once, each version fading in and out like bad reception. The whole town shimmered, glitching between light and dark. He ran, through the streets, past the diner, past the church, but every path folded back into itself. The signs changed each time he looked at them. Main Street became N Street. Welcome to Still Creek became Welcome Back. He ducked into a house for cover. Inside, the TV was on, static. Then an image, himself, standing in the same room. He stared at the screen, and the figure on it smiled. Then the power went out. Noah stumbled into the kitchen. The smell of decay hit him, rotting food, mold, something else.
On the wall, scratched into the paint, were hundreds of tally marks circling the room. In the center, "We forget so we can remember again." He backed away slowly, flashlight shaking, until he bumped into something, a person. He turned around and his blood froze. It was him, again. But this version looked older, beard overgrown, skin pale, eyes dead. The man opened his mouth and spoke in Noah's own voice. "I tried to leave too, but every path is memory. The town keeps us. It replays us." Then he faded, leaving behind only the sound of footsteps and whispering fog. Noah dropped to his knees. He realized now, the fog didn't just trap the dead, it recorded moments. Every step, every thought, every fear. The town was reliving itself through everyone who entered, and he was now one of its recordings. He looked at his trembling hands and whispered, "How many times have I done this?" Outside, the bell tolled again. 1, 2, 3 times. And the mist began to take shape. Not ghosts, not people. Reflections of him. Dozens, maybe hundreds walking the streets, repeating the same night forever. The fog whispered in a chorus, all his own voice layered together. "We are the echo, Noah. We are the loop." And as he stared into the shifting wall of his own shadows, one of them smiled and started walking toward him.
Noah hadn't slept. He wasn't even sure if he could anymore. The concept of time itself had dissolved inside the fog. Day and night no longer mattered. The sun hadn't risen in days, but the air had changed. It was thinner now, trembling, like the town itself was waiting for something. He wandered the main street again. The buildings flickered between states. Some looked new and alive, others burned down and abandoned. The fog shimmered in colors he couldn't describe. Reality felt like a reflection on cracked glass. He stopped in front of the church. The doors were open this time. A faint golden light pulsed inside. The bell above rang once, deep and heavy. And then the whispers began again, softer this time, more like a melody. He stepped in. The interior was no longer ruined. The pews were polished, candles burned steadily, and the crucifix hung perfectly centered. He could smell fresh incense. For a moment, it looked like a memory of the past, playing out perfectly preserved. At the altar, someone stood, a figure cloaked in black, unmoving. Noah's breath caught. "Who are you?" The figure didn't turn. Its voice was quiet, echoing like it came from everywhere at once. "You know me. You've known me since you arrived." He took a step closer. The air grew colder. "This town remembers. It remembers every scream, every death, every lie told to forget what was buried here." Noah swallowed. "What is this place?" The figure finally turned, and his stomach dropped. It was him. Not another double. This one was older, darker, hollow-eyed but calm. Still Creek was never a town. It was a quarantine. They built it to contain a memory, a virus that learned how to think. It infected not bodies, but time itself. Noah shook his head. "That's impossible." "You're proof that it isn't. Every time someone enters, the fog records them, their thoughts, their fears, until they become part of the memory. You've done this before, Noah, hundreds of times." He backed away, heart hammering. "Then how do I stop it?" The older version smiled faintly. "You can't stop memory. You can only erase it."
Noah's flashlight flickered. The illusion of the restored church began to dissolve, revealing the rotting walls beneath, the broken windows, the corpses in the pews. The golden light turned red. If you destroy the source, you destroy yourself, because you are the memory now. Noah looked around. The source? Where is it? The figure pointed toward the hill beyond the town. Under the tower, the first transmission, the first lie. The church began to shake. The floorboards cracked open, and the fog poured out from beneath like a living ocean, screaming in 1,000 voices. Noah ran through the collapsing doors, into the street where the air shimmered with static and light. He could see the tower in the distance, pulsing like a heart. He ran toward it, the ground shifting beneath his feet, streets bending, buildings folding in on themselves, the entire town rearranging itself. As he climbed the hill, he realized the truth. The fog wasn't chasing him. It was following him home. When he reached the top, he saw the hatch beneath the tower, the same one he'd seen before. But this time it was open, and from it light poured upward, white and endless, humming with a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. He stared down into it, a swirling void of light and shadow, flickering images of his past, his doubles, the city, the church, all blending into one. The whispers grew louder, merging into a single sentence that repeated over and over. Forget to remember. Remember to forget. Noah gritted his teeth and stepped closer to the edge. The light pulled him like gravity. He whispered almost to himself, "Then I'll end it." He jumped. The fog screamed, every voice, at once, and the world turned white.
There was no sensation of falling, no impact, no pain, only light. It surrounded Noah like water, soundless yet vibrating with every heartbeat he'd ever had. Images floated past him, his arrival in Still Creek, the fog, the voices, the church, the tower. But they were different now, fractured like reflections on broken glass. He saw hundreds of versions of himself, each trapped in their own endless loop, some screaming, some silent, some walking the same streets over and over. Every one of them looked up at him as he drifted through the white. "You can't destroy memory," the echoes whispered. "You can only become part of it." He reached out. His hand dissolved into mist, his body followed, not dying, but transforming. He could feel the town's pulse merge with his own. The fog wasn't an infection or a curse. It was him. It was everyone who had ever been forgotten. Then, silence and darkness. When light returned, the town was quiet. The fog was gone. The streets were still. Sunlight, real sunlight, broke through the clouds for the first time in decades, warming the broken rooftops and cracked pavement. Still Creek looked peaceful. A small group of men in hazmat suits walked cautiously down the main road, scanning the area with humming instruments. Their radios crackled. "Sector 9 clear. No active biosigns." "Copy. No movement in 48 hours. It's dead." They passed by the diner, the church, the radio tower. Everything was coated in a thin layer of white ash, like snow. One of the men stopped near a wall and brushed the surface. Faintly etched beneath the soot were words, "We forget, so we can remember again." He frowned. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Another man adjusted his headset. "Probably residual patterns from the fog event. Data ghosts." They moved on, their boots crunching the ash. None of them noticed the faint hum that still lingered under the ground, so soft it could have been the wind. That night, as their convoy drove away from Still Creek, one of the researchers switched on the radio to test the frequencies. It was static at first. Then a faint voice came through. "This is Still Creek Radio. Can anyone hear me?" The scientist froze. "Did you hear that?" Static again. Then silence. He glanced in the rearview mirror, and for a moment, just for a second, he saw movement in the fog behind them. A figure standing at the top of the hill, near the tower. The voice whispered one last time, almost kind. "You remembered." The radio died, and as the sun sank behind the mountains, the fog began to rise again, quietly, patiently, rolling down from the hills like a breath drawn back into sleeping lungs. Because some memories never die. They just wait to be found again.